Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the tHRive conference. Good morning, Bumi. Good to have you here.
Morning, how about today?
How was your week?
It was very well, thank you. How's yours?
Great. Okay, just giving a couple of more seconds for more people to join, and then I'll introduce you, then hand over. Good morning, Bolanle, Elizabeth, Obaseki. You're all welcome. Great to have you all here again. Trust you all had a great week. Thank you for joining. Good morning, Peter. And for everyone joining us on YouTube, you're welcome. This is the fourth weekend. We've had 18 fantastic sessions over the past 3 weekends. We're looking forward to another 6 this weekend, then the next weekend to round it all up with another 6 sessions. So we still have a lot in store for you. Good morning, Adenike. Chinedu, you're welcome. Silva, thank you for joining. You're welcome, Adewumi. You're welcome, Felicia. Thank you for joining. Owoido, you're welcome. Great to have you all here. Just a couple of more minutes and then we dive right in. We're going to be looking at innovative reward strategies, leveraging on design thinking. Our speaker for today is Bumi Nwabweze. This session has been pre-approved for 3 business credits. So for those with the tHRive certification, you should look out for this as you need 15 business credits towards your tHRive recertification. All right. In 30 seconds, these sessions will start. Thank you all for joining again. All right. Thank you all for joining again. Let's meet our speaker for today. Bumi Nwabweze led the rewards function for South East, West, and Central Africa, as well as the compensation strategy for IBM Global Technology Services, spanning over 20 countries across the Middle East and African region. She is a human resources leader with over 12 years experience in different facets of HR, particularly within the high-tech industry. Bumi has led several HR projects leveraging on artificial intelligence and analytics. Recently, she led the pay transparency project in our region, communicating the skills for currency agenda and enabling managers to have difficult pay conversations with their employees, ensuring they deliver an authentic employee experience which directly impacts engagement. She prides herself in understanding the economic and business climate in the region she covers and adopting different initiatives to rethink the HR function. She has a postgraduate degree in human resource management from the University of Bath, UK. She's a certified design thinking and agile professional, a member of the CIPD and World at Work. In between work, she's fascinated by innovative technology. She's a foodie, a just discovered marathoner, and a lover of good, soulful music. She also loves to coach and mentor individuals on career choices and serves as a volunteer for several charities. So with a loud, okay, we can't hear you, but with a with a loud applause and a virtual standing ovation, let's welcome Bumi to the Thrive Conference.
Thank you, Babajide.
Great to have
Thank
you.
thank you. So thank you everyone for joining the session. Let me just share my screen. If I could share my screen, Babajide.
Yes, please go
Okay.
ahead.
All right, fantastic. 1 second. Okay. Let me know how you can see this, Babajide. Are you seeing this in the presenter mode, or you're seeing this, you're just seeing the actual slides?
No, we is in presenter mode.
Okay, so let me end show and just use as, just share normally. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so this is better, yeah?
Yes, it is.
Okay, fantastic. All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking out time to join this session today. My name is Fumiwa Boise, as Babajide, already mentioned. I'm a total reward leader, and I'll be your facilitator today. As we go through the session, if you have any questions whatsoever, you can just pop it in the chat box, and then I would, come to those questions later at specific, intervals during the session. So I will take questions as we go, but, it would be a bit more structured. So at specific timing that I've already put into my presentation, I would go through the questions that you have in your chat box, but please, try as much as possible to, remember that it's a very interactive session. If you're not clear, if you have some challenges or you need more explanation, just pop it in the chat box and then I'll look at it and then, explain where required, right? Okay. So today, what we're going to be talking about essentially is, how can we as, HR professionals or reward professionals, right? For those of you that have, HR generalist responsibilities and you also are responsible for the reward function in your organization, okay? So how do we, come up with reward strategies that are going to align with the current market realities and going forward, right? I know that a lot of organizations right now, what they've done so far is they've adjusted a couple of their reward programs just to suit what is going on ground now, right? So they've applied, short-term fixes. How do we quickly mitigate specific issues, particularly around cost, and then they've gone ahead to just apply what we call short-term fixes, right? What we'll be talking about today will primarily be on the long-term solutions, right? How do we design, how do we come up with strategies that are going to take us into the long term, into the future, and not just because there's COVID right now. What are the solutions and strategies that will need to sustain the organization from a reward perspective post COVID, right? Babajide, if you could just put up the poll quickly. Babajide, yeah. Okay, so what I want us to do quickly is just to, help us get a sense. I want to get a sense of, what we think is going on in, the market from a reward perspective, right? So the question is, what actions do you think, organizations have taken to manage the impact of COVID on costs, right? So you could choose up to three, the three that you feel are the most important, or the three that you feel are the most widely, implemented. It could be in your own organization, or based on research that you've done, or based on feedback that you've heard. So we have about 2 minutes to quickly just click on, what we feel. So there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just trying to get a level of, our understanding of what's been going on from a reward perspective in the market due to, the COVID crisis. Okay, are we good? So if we're done, I think Babajide, you can show us the results.
Just people are still voting. So
okay, all right, fantastic, no problem.
near about 14 people have voted, and we
Okay.
have 22 attendees currently.
Okay, so let's wait. Yeah.
So
Okay. Although the poll still, yeah, it would obviously come up on everybody's individual screen, right? Okay, because I've completed it, so mine's gone off. Yeah. So there's no right or wrong answer, just pick what you feel, even if you're not aware, just pick anything you feel is, more appropriate,
For those on YouTube, sorry, you might not be able to participate in this.
Okay.
So because you won't see the poll pop up on your screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, 15 more seconds. We have 78% of people voted, so just trying to get it up to probably 80. If you're just joining us, there's a poll on your screen. Kindly respond to it in the next 30 seconds so we can move on. Okay, I think we have a good number, 20 out of 26, 21 now. So we can end it, right?
Okay, yes. Okay. All right. Fantastic. Okay. So, I mean, this is quite a different perspective from what has been going on globally. It's just a little bit different, right? And I think that's because I think within Nigeria, I think it's when it comes to salary cuts that I see it being the highest. Um, I don't think we have very stringent regulations around, having to reduce people's salaries because of, specific economic or social issues, and then in terms of like the pandemic as well. Anyway, I'll show you what the global outlook looks like. And it's quite similar. The reason I said it was a bit different was from the salary cut perspective, right? So I think because they have more laws around, what you can do and cannot do when it comes to things like salary. It's not high. It's not that high on their list, right? So this is a survey that was done by Conferry. Conferry is a business and
Can I
HR
start sharing
consultant.
the poll results?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Okay.
So this is a global survey that was done by Conferry. Conferry is a business and HR consulting firm, a global company. And what they had done was they had run this survey in March. Initially, when they started off in March, that was when COVID was deep, just started evolving in a lot of countries, right? At that point, organizations probably had not, envisaged, the kind of impact it would have. So not a lot of organizations were doing some of these actions listed here, right? But by May, because of how fast the pandemic spread, across the world, organizations had to take a bit more drastic action. So you would see that a lot of the actions doubled in number in terms of organizations taking such action. So you would look at your salary freezes. So by salary freezes, what I mean or what they mean is no salary increase for that year. So if you had an organization that had planned to give their annual salary increase, they just put a freeze to it and didn't go ahead with it. And then for adjustments to short-term incentives. So if you have organizations that pay you bonuses, maybe biannually, or incentives and commissions to their sellers, they had to, adjust it. Some adjusted in the sense that, the payout, became smaller, right? And then in some cases, what organizations did, and a lot of organizations in Nigeria um, was to lay off people, to use a more common word, was to fire people, right? And to retrench people, because that was the only way they felt they could actually manage, the impact, the COVID pandemic had on their business, right? So a lot of these actions for me are short-term fixes. They are reactive actions, right? Not proactive. I understand we have to think of cost and, some companies actually, filed for bankruptcy. Some companies went out of business totally across the world, right? So I understand, the impact of cost in them making these decisions. But what we would be focusing on today is how we can adjust our reward programs, our reward strategies in the long term, right? Because COVID, it hasn't come to stay, but we intend to see it over a period of time. I'm being very optimistic, but the way we work, the way we do business, in the world has changed drastically, right? So this is something that I see would be long term, right? So moving on to the next slide, just like I said, if you have any questions, just pop it up in the chat box. I'm going to respond to them at every 5 slide. Once I complete every 5 slide, 5 to 6 slides, I will then respond, to the questions, right? So how has the COVID, pandemic changed the way we view reward, right? So this is us, trying to be able to understand, why we think the reward function has to change, right? You can pop some comments. If you have any views that are different from what I have indicated here, it will be very interesting to see your views around, how you feel the pandemic has changed the way we view rewards. So it'll be interesting to see what your own sentiments are around this question, right? So for me, I would say that business priorities have changed, right? Like I said, at this point, a lot of organizations are just looking for ways to remain relevant, right? And not go out of business. So if you had organizations, for example, I take the food industry in Nigeria, where primarily everybody has to go in, and then, I'm talking about the fast food restaurants and, some of your local restaurants and all that, where you would have to go in and sit down and dine in, right? And a lot of them didn't have platforms where you could order food online, right? Now that, COVID has come, there's a lot of rush for all of them to get, technology to help support, their business. If not, if they're not able to move online, they're going to run out of business, because no one is having to come to dine in. And even with, the ease of, the lockdown, for example, people can actually go out and buy takeout, but a lot of people are still very skeptical. Nobody wants to go out, right? So if you look at that industry now, you have to be able to adopt, some technology to help you move to the online business. You have to adapt quickly, right? So because business priorities have changed, the way we see HR essentially has to change, has to be in alignment with, every organization's, new business model, or, new business, strategy, right? Organizations are also becoming, more fast-paced and agile, right? They're having to realize that for us to compete in the market, we have to be able to be quite flexible in our current business structure, our current business processes, right? And for me, I feel that because of that, there's a need to focus on critical talents. I'll explain more of that in detail in a couple of slides. And then in terms of what's been going on globally, right? Analytics, from surveys have shown that we need to move away from just having a best practice reward approach, or just having, this is our reward framework and it applies to everybody. We need to move away from that and move to a more customized and personalized reward strategy. When I say customized and personalized, what I mean is a reward strategy that is fit for individuals, that is fit for different employee segments or groups. For example, a reward strategy that is fit for your baby boomers, a reward strategy that is fit for your millennials, because what is considered value to those demographics is relative, right? And I'll talk more about that as we go on, right? Money also will no longer be a major motivator, right? So what I mean is organizations will not be looking to use money as a retention strategy anymore, right? Most times, once you have an employee that you consider a top talent, you're looking for ways to reward them from majorly a financial perspective. How do I give this person a cash bonus? How do I increase their incentives and commissions? Everything from, a monetary and financial perspective, right? Now, because organizations are struggling with their cost, every organization now is looking for how to cut and reduce their overheads, right? So money is not easily available, essentially, right? So what becomes more important now is looking for other ways, non-financial ways, non-financial types of reward, right? To use that as a motivator right now, right? And then collaboration becomes more important as well. Now that we have people working from home, work is done across the globe. You have people that normally would need to be here physically. You're having to collaborate with different people across the world to drive, that business performance or the productivity that is required. So how do we now focus more on a team-based reward, right? Instead of, rewarding from an individual perspective, how do we move to a team-based reward, right? And then one key major view that I have is around the adoption of HR technology. So if you're an organization now and you don't have some level of HR technology, it's going to be very difficult for you to move with the time. It's going to be difficult for you to evolve, right? You know, I don't mean invest in very expensive tech, right? So for example, you've seen companies that traditionally, they never work from home. They don't believe that employees can work from home, right? But because of what has happened, you've seen them having to, for example, they've gone to invest in collaboration tools, for example, the likes of your Slack. Slack is a collaboration tool, the likes of Trello. That's a project management tool where everyone across anywhere, you can all come together online to do your work together, because you know you can't have people seated in the same location, right? So don't wait till essentially don't wait till something like this happens before you invest in some level of HR technology, right? So it's a necessity as we speak, right? So moving on, like I said, if you have any questions, pop them in the slide. I'm going to take questions in the next 2 slides, I think, right? Now, so moving on, you know, what are the key questions, you know, for us as, you know, reward professionals? What do we need to be asking ourselves, right? You know, when we sit down and say, okay, look, based on, you know, all, you know, the business priorities that has changed, you know, based on what's going on in the environment, like I'd mentioned in my, excuse me, in my previous slide, what do we need to do as reward professionals? You know, what questions should we be asking ourselves, you know, to ensure that we are in alignment with what is going on, you know, externally, right? So how do we develop a reward strategy? Like I said, you know, I mentioned that to suit the new ways of working. How do we move beyond short-term fixes? So all the short-term fixes were the actions that I showed you in the previous slide, you know, from the global conferee reward survey. Those are short-term fixes, firing people, cutting salaries and all that, right? How do we move beyond those short-term fixes and move to a more holistic approach to reward, right? How do we incorporate all the total reward elements, right? Not just focusing on money, money, money. How do we infuse non-financial reward? How do we get our employees to actually understand that we have non-financial reward, you know? It's something that we would also look into in more detail. How do we make our reward more differentiated? So you're thinking, how can I actually customize the reward that I have, you know, the reward framework that we have in our organization? How can I customize it? How can I differentiate it, right? And then how do we ensure that there's an accurate measure of, you know, financial return, you know, on these programs that we have? Because trust me, like I said, organizations are looking for ways to cut costs, right? So if you are coming up with programs that is just so cost intensive, you have to be able to justify what the return on investment for that program is. So you have to be very selective in being able to justify programs that would actually show some level of, you know, financial return to the organization, right? There are companies that have started, you know, asking themselves these questions. They've gone beyond asking questions. They've started designing solutions. You know, they've started changing their reward philosophy. They are revamping their whole strategy now because they see the future, right? And they understand that they have to take action, you know, now, right? So I'm going to take some questions. If there are any questions on the comment box, let me see if there are any questions in the chat box. Okay. Okay, there are no comments and questions so far. Fantastic. But please don't be shy to ask any questions. Let me move on now, right? Okay. Now, before we, you know, go into reward strategies that I feel organizations should be looking at, that I feel your own organization should be looking at and, you know, thinking, you know, around, you know, those strategies, I want us to touch quickly on design thinking. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with design thinking. Design thinking is something that I love. It's something that has helped me in my career be able to actually deliver solutions that are fit for the users, right? Because a lot of times as, HR professionals, we come and say, oh, I've just attended this nice webinar, or I've just, gotten some informal feedback from my friend that works in another company, and they're doing this in that company, right? And then you feel that because they're doing it in that company, it looks very good on paper, it would also work, for my organization, right? But more than ever now, your solutions have to show value, right, to your users, not just something that, oh, we have a nice program, but are your employees actually gaining any value from any of those programs, right? So that is the essence of design thinking, right? So I'm going to touch briefly on design thinking. Design thinking sessions and workshop usually cover about 16 hours to 3 days when we've run those sessions. Some could actually be longer, particularly when there's an actual project that is ongoing, right? So we're using the principles, as we go on that project. So it could take longer. So I'm just going to touch a surface level of what design thinking is, what the principles of design thinking are, and how we can apply these principles in creating a reward strategy that is very user-focused. Okay. So moving on to the next slide, what is design thinking? I want to get your views, if you could put in the chat box, if you could tell me what you think design thinking is. Like I said, I'd like to, have it as interactive as much as possible, even though I know we might not be able to speak, but we can also use the comment box, so just tell me what you think design thinking is. Just a quick, summary of what you think, design thinking is. It could be just a short statement, anything whatsoever that pops up, that comes to your mind. If you could pop it in the chat box, would really be nice to see. Can everybody hear me? Okay. All right. So what are your, what's your thinking around design thinking? What do you think design thinking is? Just pop it in the comment. Like I said, it's fine. No answer is going to be entirely wrong. Samuel is thinking. Okay. Okay, so that I don't take any more of our time, let me move on. I'm guessing this might be a topic that we're probably not familiar with, okay? Owedo said, making your approach in a different manner. Yes, quite similar, yes. Could be likened to company policy. Okay, we'll talk about it. Any more comments? All right, okay. It's a Saturday, so I want to make sure that I don't keep you guys, longer than you should be here, right? Employees, yes, involves considering the employees you're creating a solution for. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so let me quickly tell you what design thinking is. Now, design thinking is a mindset. So traditionally, design thinking was used for product development, product innovation, but they realized that, look, we can actually use design thinking on any project entirely. It could be projects on marketing, projects on finance, projects on HR, anyone can use design thinking. Entrepreneurs can use design thinking. You can be a fashion designer, you can be an interior designer, you can all use design thinking, right? Now, design thinking is a mindset, right? So it's a mindset that is continually looking for opportunities to create new and updated experiences for its users, right? So the word experience is very important, right? So design thinking is not about creating a product or a service. It's about the experience that your user gets from using that product and service. How do I, make sure that the experience is positive, the experience is engaging? How do I do that, right? Not just providing or churning out products and services, but how does that product change the experience that, my user has around, that product and service? So let's take, so design thinking requires you to consider a person's experience. Now, at the heart of design thinking, it's the people, right? Design thinking focuses majorly on the people that are using any of the products or services. It's about people, right? It's about how people feel about the experience they have using a product or a service, right? So let's take, for example, you're having coffee, right? You want to make coffee. You have a coffee machine, maybe you have a coffee maker at home, right? And then you've made your coffee, right? I am not really getting any experience from the coffee maker itself. My experience is as I'm having that coffee, maybe I am thinking about, how to come up with some new innovations, or I'm thinking about a loved one. I'm thinking about, how to chat up. So it's the experience that you have using that product or service. So for us, from a HR perspective, it's the experience your employee has from using a program, a HR program or a reward program that you have, for example, right? So it focuses a lot on experience, right? It's the way a person feels when they are, doing something, when they are probably using your product or you're using their service, or it's a process. It's how do I feel at that point in time, right? So for us, design thinking is being able to understand your users very well, and then having to come up with solutions that will increase, their customer or employee experience. In this case, for us, it would be employee experience, right? And now there's a lot of focus on employee experience. It's a buzzword. Everybody is using employee experience, right? Because they've realized that, look, I just don't want to. So let's give an example. I just don't want to work for a company that, has a good brand reputation, blah, blah, blah. I want to work for a company that really cares about the things that I hold dear to my heart in terms of my value, right? So that's how you then channel a positive employee experience, right? I would explain in more detail as we go on, right? So with design thinking, what are the principles of design thinking? Like I'd mentioned in my earlier slide, design thinking revolves around the people, the users. In this case, it would be your employees, right? Who are your users, right? The people that use your programs in organizations. For some companies, people that use their products. For some companies, people that use their services, right? That is what it means to focus on your users. Trying to understand how your users interact with your product, how they interact with a program or a service that you have in an organization. Also understanding the needs of your users. And how do you understand the needs of your users? By asking them relevant questions, by observing, by learning from their experiences, by understanding what processes they're part of. So for example, in an organization, how do I understand what my employee needs? I'll tell you how we can do that, but it's basically trying to understand what processes they are part of, what problems they're trying to solve in their own role, what defines success for them. So just understanding the user, your employee, right? Design thinking involves you being able to listen, right? So it's a lot of listening, observing, and learning, right? You would definitely have assumptions. For example, like I said, your assumptions might be because a certain reward program works in company XYZ, that is your own assumption. It would work in company ABC, my company. No. Design thinking is about observing, understanding, learning from your users. Essentially, what you learn from them, what you understand from them, when you listen to them, it is all that information that you take back to go and come up with a program, or redesign your reward function. It is understanding your users, because you're not just the way HR itself is evolving, right? And it focuses a lot on the employees. Initially we would say our stakeholders. Some companies still think that their stakeholders are people that buy their products or their clients, but your major stakeholder in every organization now, and that is where employee experience comes in, is your employees, right? Because when you don't, employees are the ones that do the actual work. It's not some angel somewhere, right? Your employees deliver the services your clients need. Your employees design products for your clients. Your employees design services for your clients. So, I mean, there's a lot of huge focus. There's a huge focus, when it comes to design thinking on, from an organizational perspective, from a people perspective, it is on your employees, right? You are not your users. That's another thing you need to understand when it comes to design thinking. And that, goes back to, about assumptions and also how I feel. So if I feel that, oh, this is Bumi and, this works for Bumi, it might not work for somebody else, right? So you need to understand that you are not your user. What works for you doesn't mean that it would work for another person. So you need to be able to understand what your users need, what they're saying, what they're doing, just a holistic view of who your users are, in this case, your employees, right? And then the second principle of design thinking is what we call restless reinvention, right? So from that word reinvention, right? And I think we do it a lot as HR practitioners. We come up with, programs and we feel this program is working. We don't make any changes. For someone like me, if I design a program, right? Within a year, I'm looking for how to go back, look at that program and see how that program is still relevant, right? Things might have changed from an external perspective, from an internal perspective. I'm not going to say that a program I designed in January this year might still be relevant January 2021. That is what we mean by reinvention, right? You have to view your ideas or any solutions that you have as a prototype, right? When I say a prototype, something that is not finished, something that I can go back to and tweak and revamp. You keep going back to, right? So let me give an example. Human needs fundamentally is the same, right? I want to take, for example, I want to get from A to B in terms of transportation. I want to get from Lekki to Aja. I want to get from Lekki to Surulere, right? That is transportation. It's a need. Everybody has a need for that, right? But the approach to that need is what will be different. If you take a century, a century ago, 100 years ago, for example, the mode of transportation was maybe horse riding, and then it evolved to maybe the carriage, so people kept on reinventing along the line. The need is still the same. The need is to get from A to B, but that reinvention keeps happening. And, at this point, I'm hearing that we might have, cars that are driverless. That's how far invention is. And then also for companies that have remained relevant, it has been through reinvention. Some companies, because they haven't, applied any form of reinvention, they've gone out of business. We know companies that felt that they were big, many years ago, and now they are nowhere to be found, right? Because they haven't reinvented. The same thing applies to your HR function. The same thing applies to reward. You have to reinvent, right? When it comes to the solutions that you're deploying from a reward perspective, right? You also have to be able to come together. So most times, ideas is not should not be limited to just you. I mean, the HR team. I can be the only one that is coming up with, the idea, and I will talk about that later as well, right? Your employees can give you ideas. Like I said, all the feedback you get from employees, a lot of them, they're subtle ideas for you to take back and then implement. I can give an example. Many years ago, like 4 years ago, when I was still in IBM, uh, one of the things that we did was, we'd gotten feedback, from our employees that, our performance management system was not that objective, right? And it was very rigid, right? And we said, okay, you know what, let's do one thing. These are our employees. They are the ones that we're assessing essentially. They are the ones that, would bring business success for us, right? Let's co-create. And that's what we did. We decided to co-create the new performance management system in IBM with our employees. In fact, we had like what we call a jam, a technology, it's a tech thing. We had employees from all over the world come online. We were there for like almost 3-4 hours. You could come in at different intervals, and then we were creating together. It wasn't a HR thing. It wasn't HR just creating a new performance management system. It was employees and HR doing it together. And trust me, the results of that collaboration, you know, they're fantastic. We're still using that performance management system, even though we reinvent every year. We look at it every year and say, okay, look, maybe we need to change this. But the major blueprint itself was co-created by collaboration between the HR professionals in the organization and our employees. So we did it together. So ideas should not be limited to just, you as HR. You could actually pull somebody from finance, for example, and tell me, you know what do you think about this program that we have? What do you think about this process? And then listen to them. You'll be surprised the sort of feedback you would get from them. So it's not just running annual engagement surveys. Most times your engagement surveys don't request for that much detail, right? I mean, engagement surveys nowadays are limited to maybe 10, 15 questions because employees will get bored along the line. You can't really cover every topic in your engagement surveys, right? So it's not just about the surveys, right? It's about having a relationship, understanding your employees. It could be through, I will explain how you could do that in the next slide anyway. And then it's also about you being able to take risk, right? More than ever, a lot of the programs that I have designed were programs that I felt that I knew, not that I felt, were not going to be approved by my global directors. I'll give an example of a program that I had just started working on, and we started pilot testing before I left IBM. It's a flexible benefits project, right? That will be for me the first, not within iTech, within sub-Saharan Africa. You don't have organizations that are usually doing flexible benefits. You have them in, the very developed societies in the US, you could have them in the UK, Europe and all that. But within Africa itself, it wasn't something that companies wanted to play with, right? And I said, you know what? Let's try this thing out, right? Because now more than ever, I'm having to, I mean, we as HR professionals, and I speak for myself as well, we're having to understand that our employees place value on different things. I'll give an example. I have an employee we've just hired who is just 21. You just finished school, right? And then I have an employee that is a mid professional. You've been working for 10 years, 20 years, maybe you're closer to retirement. And I have an employee who's just 21, who's just started working, right? The benefits that those two employee demographics might have will be entirely, I mean, what is value to them will be entirely different. For someone that is close to retirement, that person would really value, voluntary pension contribution or voluntary provident fund, right? But for a 21-year-old, a millennial might value, I want gym membership, right? You might say, we have five, these are the 5 benefits that we have. And it's possible that only one benefit is of use to me. It's happened to me several times, right? I remember, working within IBM itself, my medical insurance was something I never used, right? Because I was covered with my, husband's, HMO. So I wasn't using it. So it was like IBM was paying for me every year and I wasn't getting any value from it. So we have to be able to come up with innovations that are very different from the norm, innovations that are risky, right? And, just try it out, right? Because trust me, for all the great innovators out there, the Elon Musk, the Amazons and all that, they've always had inventions and innovations that people considered very absurd. They've always had innovations that are like, oh, this person is crazy. That's the sort of innovations they've had. That's the sort of inventions they've had, right? And then the third principle is having a diverse, empowered team. And that, comes back to the point I was making about anybody can be an harbinger of idea. Anybody can give you ideas, right? Even your children can give you ideas. I remember 2 years ago, my son, who was 9 at that time, said something very profound to me that I felt was too profound to come from a 9-year-old, right? And I took that message, and that message really helped me around, trying to understand, how to live life, right? So I'm just saying, like I said, if you're a one-man HR person, it might be difficult. You might say, oh, but I don't have anybody, any team that I can sit with. Like I said, your teams could be anybody. It could be one employee. You know what, guy, let's sit down together. Let's discuss this. I'm thinking about this. Because the thing is, when you have a varied perspective, it brings better ideas. It's just a given, right? Because you have people that are thinking differently from you, right? Your solution is not the best. It's not to be considered the best. You have other people that can come in and bring in ideas that are entirely different from what you thought, right? And then it's important that you come together as a team. If you work in a team, if it's a team of different HR professionals together, or even if you're a one-man HR person in your organization, you need to be able to come together. So all those ideas, the feedback you've gotten, bring them together. You can tell a story with it, right? Tell a story. But I'll also explain that quickly to you guys in my next slide. So if you have any questions, just pop it up, and Babajide, just let me know, because I'm not monitoring the chat box. Let me know, and then I can take that question.
Okay.
Yeah. So quickly, how do we apply design thinking principles on reward strategies? Now that we have a fair understanding of what design thinking is, what the principles are, how do I go back to my organization? How do I go back as a HR professional and start, applying it? And so, like I said, design thinking is not just applicable to reward. It's not just applicable to product innovation. Anybody, you can use design thinking on any HR program, right? So the first thing, like I'd mentioned earlier, is to understand your employees, right? How do I understand my employees? You can have interviews with your employees. You can have focus groups. Maybe you're looking at employees from different business units, for example. Okay, you come from marketing, you come from sales. Let's sit together, 3 or 4 of us. This is what we're trying to do. I'd like your views on it. I'd like to understand what your problems are with using certain programs, what your feedback is, because more than ever, you get a lot when you have those conversations, right? It could be a virtual call, whatever. You get a lot from that, more than from surveys. Like I said, surveys are usually limited to your quantitative responses. You have very few qualitative responses, and even when you do, some organizations don't have the technology to break down that sort of feedback. I know within IBM, our qualitative feedback was very important to us. We could actually dissect it. We had analytics, we had tools that we were using to dissect it, right? But in the case where you don't have that, try as much as possible to have a virtual meeting now that we're all probably working from home, interviews with them, get a group of employees together to discuss, anything within the organization and all that. So that's the first step, right? So maybe I'm trying to redesign our reward strategy now. So I get you guys and sit down. Oh, tell me about your experience, with our annual salary cycle, for example. Tell me about your experience with, the incentive and, the commissions that we have. What can we do better? What ideas do you have around that? Tell me what you feel, so as much as possible, you also need to be clear and specific on why you're having these conversations, right? And also make it quite open. So it doesn't have to be HR related. It could be business related. It could be, how we feel that our go-to-market strategy is not relevant with with what's going on in the market. It could be anything entirely. But trust me, you are going to get a lot of information from having that kind of conversation with your employees, right? Now, the next thing will be to develop what we call personas. I'm going to show you, I'm going to jump this slide. I'm going to go back to this slide again, just to show you what we mean by persona, right? Now, there's a tool, an online tool. So the thing is, I am coming from a very tech environment. My experience has been with tech. I love technology a lot. I use tech a lot, even with tech that is not approved. For example, when I was with IBM, I would go and source and just do some research and say, oh, this is nice. I can use this for this. I can use this to help me in, churning out my PowerPoint presentations. I can anything, right? So this is a tool that is called Mural. I don't know if you've heard of Mural. So let me pop it in the chat box. Mural, okay? So Mural is a tool, it's a collaboration tool, right? So I mean, if you're not using, I expect that every organization now, I don't know how you guys are working, whether it's just via chat, because chat can be very draining. It doesn't get anything out. Mural is a collaboration tool, right? And in Mural, you can do anything. Mural focuses a lot on workflows. right? We do sticky notes on Mural. So, you know, when you have your normal yellow, red sticky notes that you stick on boards in the office, you can actually do that in Mural. So the tool itself, I could show you later if we have time, but this is the empathy map itself it's from Mural. It's taken from Mural. So I took a screenshot of it and took it out from Mural, but I'll show you how the tool is. So you can do sticky notes on your Mural, you know, instead of, you know, the pink and yellow that we do physically, you can actually post sticky notes digitally on Mural with your ideas and all that. So that's what you can use for design thinking. There's actually a design thinking template on Mural that you can actually follow from start to finish. It tells you what you need to do, at what stage, what is required. So I said you need to develop personas. So once you've had conversations, you can use either of the two templates. So for example, I sit with my employee, I'm trying to understand, what is this employee saying to me? What does this employee think? What is this employee doing? What does he feel? You can put all that, map all that together using Mural, using sticky notes on Mural, or you can just go the more traditional way of, oh, what's your name? What role are you in? What are your skills? You know, ask all the questions. What are your pain points? What do you do on a daily basis? What are your concerns? What's your work environment like? You know, all those questions to create those personas. Now, it might look like as if it's going to be very challenging to do. Oh, do I have to complete each of this, you know, templates for an employee? That's where Mural comes in. With Mural, you can have feedback from 10, 15 employees on just one template, this empathy map. All you have to do is sticky notes as you're having conversation. In fact, you can invite the employee into your Mural session, and then the employee is also posting their ideas and sticky notes. It's a very fantastic tool. So how do you get the Mural tool? So sometimes organizations buy it, you know, in terms of the licensing, but sometimes you can actually use it for free, right? So right now, my Mural license is off because I've left IBM, but I still have access to it. I'm using a free version. So you can actually set up your Mural. You can have access to it for free, right? So it's if I'm hoping to leave about 15 minutes of our time to quickly show you how it works. It's a lovely tool. So you can actually access it for free, right? Okay, so let me move back to the previous slide. So that's about, you know, developing personas. Now, the next thing for you to do will be to create solutions that are user-centric. We've talked about co-creating, how, you know, you need to work with other people, other stakeholders entirely. I remember one of the design thinking sessions we had with employees, we realized that we needed to bring in our facilities and our real estate person once we were done, because, you know, everything is about employee experience. You need to understand that employee experience overlaps into different areas. It overlaps into the chairs that I sit on, it overlaps into the kitchen, anything overlaps into my badge, you know, the experience I feel from using you know, programs or services in the organization, you know. So we realized that we needed to look at our chairs, right? Some employees said, oh, the table was too high. The feedback, for example, the exits and the entries at the office, it was a bit of a struggle for some employees. You know, we got so much information. This is information typically you will not get from an engagement survey. An engagement survey will not ask you about, is your chair comfortable? Do you feel, you know, so many things, right? So we got that feedback and we realized that, okay, the units, the real estate units had to do a lot of redesigning, right? You know, it was feedback that we got from employees from this design thinking session that we realized that we had to focus a lot on employee well-being. We actually had employees that needed mental health counseling. So, you know, there's just so many things that you can do with design thinking. And like I said, understanding your users, listening to your users, right? And then once you've come up with the solution, you have to, like I mentioned earlier, it has to be a prototype. A prototype means that there's room to review. I have reviewed so many programs across, I keep reviewing. In fact, I get excited when I'm like, oh, I have to take this program I designed many years ago, I designed 12 months ago. I usually look at it at every 12 to 18 months. Let me look at it and see how we can tweak this. Let me speak to some employees. Is this working and all that? So you have to ensure that it's not really a finished solution. You're having to reinvent. And that, also explains the example I gave around, transportation. Everybody's reinventing. It's not the same. I mean, we're still not using horse carriages now, where we've moved to planes and cars and possibly, driveless cars, right? And then do a pilot test. It's so important, right? Even though so it's like you start with employees, you finish with employees, right? Whatever you're doing, I start with employees, I finish with employees. So you go to a small focus, you can do a small focus group, pull a team of employees together. So we call them sponsor users. They would actually try and look at the finished product, well, not finished, the prototype, and test it to see if this is something that would work, right? From a tech perspective, if you're having to design a new product, they would actually use the product and test it and see if it works and all that. So within HR, it's very important to apply these principles on any HR strategy that you want to revamp or develop anything. And then the last point is iterate, iterate. So iterate means you go over again. It's like you start the cycle all over again, right? So yeah, do we have any questions before I move on to the next?
No
Okay.
questions.
All right, fantastic. So, okay, I'm still going to show mural, but let me just try and finish this. And then I know we have 30 minutes for verbal questions, where you can ask actually, not just questions, but maybe we can actually just discuss generally around, any issues or anything. So moving on, these are innovative reward strategies that I feel, if not one, if not two, how you deploy it, how you design it will be entirely different, right? It would be peculiar to the industry you're coming from. It will be peculiar to the size of your business, the business operations where you work. It will be peculiar to maybe maturity, different factors would also come into play when you're trying to apply these strategies, right? So the first, there's 6 of them. The first is, performance pay. The second is what we call personalized benefits or flexible benefits. The third is what we call a pay architecture, a differentiated pay architecture. The fourth is what we call agile market pricing. The fifth is, emphasis on non-financial reward. You can, if you remember, we've talked about it, throughout, from the beginning of, the slide itself. And then the sixth is pay transparency via communication, right? So let's dig in. So emphasis on performance pay, right? So these are long-term reward strategies that you as a reward professional or a HR generalist, you need to be thinking about, right? Due to, excuse me, due to the way, the COVID pandemic has changed the way that we work. And, this is the way we work now has come to stay, right? So now, you as an organization, you as a HR person organization, you need to be able to present the case that we need to focus more on the output rather than the activity, right? And I'll tie that I'll tie that to how that influences pay, performance pay. Now I get a lot of feedback from people saying, oh, because the organization, we're so used to working from the office, employees are just faffing around at home, we can't see what they're doing, and for me, I find it very bizarre, right? Because I mean, I have worked from home for many years, right? Not permanently. Sometimes I would do 2 weeks, sometimes I would do 1 week, sometimes I would do a full month. Sometimes I would do 2 days from home, 3 days in the office. So I mean, it has never affected my output, my productivity, right? And so you have organizations that are saying, oh, because we can't see what they're doing, we can't see them, I can't see anybody in action, it means that they are not doing anything. And trust me, there's a lot of research out there that actually says that people, to a certain extent, are more productive at home than they were when they were in the office. So, I mean, at the start of the work from home policy for most organizations. Some people struggled because some people had never worked from home before. They typically would work in the office. They don't even know how to structure their day to work from home. They're getting up, they're having to cook, they're having to, there's, for them, it's like, it's chaos, right? I'm having children that are doing homeschooling, and, everything is just all over, right? But over time, right, and it's just normal for any process or anything whatsoever, there would be that numbing, the storming stage where you're still not sure how to adjust. And over time, you adjust. I see more people telling me now that they've adjusted, they have routines, they know how to structure their time, their meetings and all that. So it seems to be working and they are more productive, right? So you have to get organizations to, you as HR professionals, go away from the mindset that you need to be in the office to show that you're working. How about focusing on the output? What is this person bringing to the table, regardless of where the person is, right? So that is very important, right? And then the fact that, the fact that employees are working remotely should not mean that, I'm going to pay them less. I would find that very strange if organizations are doing that now. I don't know, because I don't know any organization doing it. But if you do, if you've heard of organizations doing that, it will be interesting to know. Not like I want the names, but what was the thinking behind this? Because I am not in the office, it means that I would earn less. Because the thing is, the economic factors hasn't changed. In fact, they're even worse off. Currency is depreciating more, inflation has gone up, cost of living is higher, and those are the things primarily you were paying for in terms of value as well, right? The value hasn't changed. The value of what the employee is doing hasn't changed in terms of performance, right? So why do I need to reduce the employee's salary, right? And then, because you have people that are not in the office and we're coming from a mindset of I need to see you in the office to work, it means that we need to ensure that we have a consistent and frequent performance reviews, right? I know that typically before COVID, you would have your performance reviews once a year. Organizations will come together, your manager, you have this discussion, but it's important that you do it as frequent as possible, right? If it's possible to have what we call performance conversations with your manager on a monthly basis, please go ahead. Structure that into your performance management process, right? I'm having one-on-one, and thankfully, we're virtual. It's just for your manager to schedule a 30-minute, 1 hour meeting with you, just to ensure that your managers are coaching the employees. They're coaching employees around performance, around, their goals, or they're even having to change, tweak the goals because of, the goals that employees had earlier in the year can no longer be applicable now. And that is the truth because, of what is going on now. If I had a goal, for example, I'm a seller, the goal was for me to reach a target of maybe 5 million naira as an example. It might be difficult. Our goals might need to move away from money, just money, and maybe move away to, for example, as a seller, leveraging on partnerships. How do I build partnerships? How do I build relationships? How do I increase my client base, for the future, for next year? So those goals will need to change, right? And then less emphasis on ratings and distributions. I know some organizations are still very hardwired. They're still doing one, you are getting 2, 3, 4, and all that, or having to tell managers that I'm forcing you into a specific rating. With what is going on now, employees are going to question that. It's not, you have more employees more than ever now that want to know, how does this work? Why are we having to do this? Why are you having to do that, right? And so from a performance pay perspective, once you have all this into play, there's clarity on this, you need to be able to then look at how we pay for performance in the organization. Do we continue to pay in the same manner? Maybe, for example, now your sellers, they get incentives and commissions for performance, and their performance is usually driven around revenue growth and profit and all that. It's very easy to say, oh, you didn't bring in this money, okay, no incentive for you. How do we then revamp it? Because now, like I said, performance for certain people would move away from just bringing in money, right? When you're thinking long term, I know organizations that have changed the goals for their sellers, for example, to reflect building relationship. Because trust me, it's building relationships, having partnerships that would bring that business for you, right? So maybe we might not get the business now or this year, but let's have, those partnerships in our pipeline. Let's focus on just building, our client base to a certain extent. Essentially, your performance pay would have to change, right? So how do we go back and look at how we pay for performance? Do we retain our short-term incentives? Do we retain the long-term incentives that we have? For example, do we continue to pay a certain percentage for maybe your short-term incentive, your bonus, or do we split it and change it? For example, do I maybe your short-term bonus was maybe 2% of your basic pay? Do I then make 1% of it focusing on how you drive that performance in terms of the behaviors required? Because behaviors now is very important right now. It's not just about you bringing in money. How did you bring in the money, right? Do I then split it? So there has to be that conversation. Once we are clear on this is what performance management should look like in the organization, right? It has to be a lot more frequent. It has to focus on a lot of coaching. We have to try and move away from raising and distribution. How do I tie that back to our short-term incentives and long-term incentives are structured? Essentially for me, I believe that your short-term and long-term incentives have to be performance-driven, not retention driven. Because most times an organization would give you, I know they will give equity, stock and shares, or I'm trying to retain this employee because it's a critical skill, not necessarily because the employee's performance is top notch, right? So you have to be able to draw the line, from our performance pay is strictly performance pay. It's not a retention tool. I remember, when I was in IBM, we had conversation with manager telling me that, oh, I want to retain this employee. Let's give him a cash retention bonus. And I was okay, I'll go back and say, you know what, cash retention bonus, even though the word retention is tied to performance. I need to know the employee's performance. I need to know the quotas the employee has made, the targets, and then they'll come back and I'll realize the employee wasn't even in any manner overperforming or how, performing exceptionally. And I would have to refuse that request, right? So we have to ensure that our short-term and long-term incentives drive business growth, right? That's it on performance pay. And then if we move to I'm looking at the time, sorry. If we move to personalized benefits, which is also flexible benefits, I gave that example about, trying to understand the employee demographics in your organization, right? It's very easy to do. I mean, if you have a tool, I mean, even on Excel, if you have all your employee data listed, you can use a pivot and then you can categorize them and say, oh, we have 10 employees that are millennials. We have 10 employees that have worked 0 to 1 year. So you decide on the categorization that you feel is relevant. I could categorize based on business units. I could categorize based on gender. I could categorize based on those, employee segments that I explained, the baby boomers, millennials, and all that. I could categorize based on the length of service in the organization, right? Because everybody would have different needs. I'm just coming, maybe I've just done 1 year or 6 months in the organization. I'm wanting to learn. I want to learn. I want to prove myself. So maybe for me, a benefit from a reward perspective might be a lot of learning and development for me. For someone who's been in the organization for 5 years, the benefits, and now this is non-financial benefits that I'm just talking about as an example. It could be around career progression. How do I move from this to this? How do I get promoted? So everybody would have different preferences, right? So from benefits, I mean core benefits, for example, your medical insurance, your childcare, benefit if you provide any. It could be gym membership, car allowance, provident, health screening, anything around those benefits is what I'm referring to now. So I take, for example, I know that some companies that were giving maybe fuel allowance or transportation allowance to their organizations have had to redirect that money to something else entirely, because okay, you're no longer making trips to the organization. So this is why in the first place, it's important to think holistically about benefits itself, right? Because now that we're all at home, transportation benefits, maybe fuel allowance, is no longer relevant. I'm not coming to work. And then you have organizations saying, you know what, let's push this cost. Some organizations flat out took away that benefit. Some organizations that were very thoughtful said, okay, you know what, let's push this benefits to something else. Why don't we push this benefits to fuel allowance for generators? Because we know that in this environment, we're dependent on generating our power ourselves, right? So it's about having that mindset. You understand what certain benefits, specific benefits that will be of value, to specific individuals, right? So if you maybe take it from this perspective, maybe the total cost of benefits for Bumi, medical insurance, all those benefits, life insurance, there's gym, there's club, all those things, is maybe $5,000 as an example per annum. What I could do from a personalized benefits perspective is to allow, and this is one of the things that we launched before I left IBM, we had a pilot in South Africa and Turkey, is to allow me as the individual. January 2020, Bumi gets $5,000. This is Bumi's benefit cost. I don't get it into my account, but because we have different tools that, maybe like your total reward statement, for example, if you're an organization right now and you don't have a total reward statement, please go and do it. It's very important. The total reward statement is not just showing this is my salary, this is pension, this is my NHF, blah, blah, blah. It's showing the things that you cannot also quantitate, right? So it's showing things like, oh, this is how much I spent on learning and development for you. This is how much I've spent on training for you. This is how much we spent on recognition. So it breaks down every element of reward, right? Because sometimes employees will say, "Oh, I'm earning 5 million naira per year," and then when in reality, what I have spent on you as an employee is about double of that, right? So when employees see that, it sort of gives them that level of, oh, I'm actually that valued in this organization. This is how much, wow, they spent this much on me and all that. So it's important. If you're not doing it, you need to look for a business justification to provide total reward statements to your organization. So the example I was giving was maybe, for example, $5,000 is the cost of my benefits per annum. And at the beginning of the year, they say, okay, Bumi, this is your 5,000 benefits online somewhere. You go and pick and choose what benefits you want. Now, the benefits would already be available in the organization. So it could be gym, provident fund. I could say, you know what, I don't want gym membership. I want to increase my provident fund. So I'm going to move maybe $1,000 to my provident fund. So, you can do that. It's achievable, right? So that's just what I feel. I feel that this is how benefits would look like in the long term, right, for organizations, right? Then, like I said, once you've done that, you can then identify benefits that are non-performing. Like I said, if you do an audit every year, you know benefits that employees don't use. I give an example. We had adoption benefits, and we realized that, while in some countries it was like, oh, it was a fantastic benefit, in this part of the world, it wasn't relevant, right? Even though we had it, yeah, people do adopt, but even when they do, some of them, the way that we're conditioned, there's a lot of secrecy around, adoption. So people wouldn't even tell you or want to claim that benefit. And it was it was a good benefit. It was a good amount of money, right? But we then had to realize that this is not it's not performing for us. Can we do something else entirely, right? So having a flexible, benefits, program is going to help you with your employee retention. I mean, it's just given, and it's also going to allow for a very good organizational culture. Okay. Now let's move to a differentiated pay architecture. So if you're familiar with, job evaluation, job and pay structures, this is what I'm referring to. You cannot continue to have the same pay and job structure as you did before. And I mean, it's one of the changes we had to do when we realized, COVID had come, and on the long term, we need to be able to do certain things. One of the first things that we did was we needed to tag our employees that were considered essential and non-essential, right? Because, for some companies, the employees that we thought were not relevant, for example, your shopkeeper or the person that is, at the till that you're having to pay money to once you've bought your goods, or the truck driver that is having to move goods from one place to the other. Those were jobs typically that we would say, oh, who is a truck driver? It's not relevant. But now, more than ever, in these organizations, those are the essential roles. Essential does not mean uh, oh, this is my top talent. No, they're different. But these are roles that should we not have, we as a business will not be able to function. So imagine if there were no truck drivers managing the supply chain, moving food from one place to the other. We would all be hungry right now, right? So first and foremost, you need to be able to classify your jobs: essential, non-essential, critical, non-critical, right? Reevaluate these jobs. You're familiar with the ACE methodology, you can use that. What value is this person bringing? What competencies are required? Do we need to look at the pay structures of these roles and tweak it in line with what is obtainable in the market? Do we need to change how we compensate these employees? For example, these were employees that normally you didn't give any sort of recognition to. Can you still hear me? It says my internet connection is unstable. Okay, I just want to be sure if you can hear me. Yeah. Can you guys can hear me? Just say yes, or can everybody still hear me? Good, fantastic. You might want to consider, changing how we reward this set of employees. For example, maybe these employees that I've talked about, or your shopkeepers, truck drivers, these are employees that normally you don't give anything like equity to stock, no short-term bonuses and all that. These are employees that you might want to start relooking how we compensate them, right? Redesigning your incentive program to reflect these realities that, look, we have essential. I know one of the things that we did was, with our essential employees, I remember that we had to, once we had done that. Okay, if you can you hear me now? Is it clear now? Is it better now? Okay. So once we done the tagging, this is essential, we then said to managers, please recognize these employees that we consider essential. We're giving you a certain amount of money to recognize them. So this is something we normally we would never have done before, right? But now it's important that you're able to do that differentiation, categorize them, and then come back to the table and say, this is how I think we should be paying or compensating or rewarding these employees, right? From a market pricing perspective, so market pricing is like your salary benchmarking, when you want to obtain data, survey data, salary survey data from external parties, from external organizations, and compare with what you guys have in your organization. So typically it's something that we do annually, right? We review our salary data annually, right? But now with what is going on, you cannot afford to do that just once a year. The market is moving faster than it used to, right? When I say the market, so uh, in terms of economic indicators, what's going on. For example, maybe in January, for example, we'd gotten feedback that the market movement, and this you'll be familiar with market movement if you're a reward professional, if you're a C&B person. But if you're not, it's fine. I'll explain what market movement is. So market movement is a projection of what organizations would be paying as a salary increase to the employees in a given year. So market movement for Nigeria, I think for the projected one for this year, I think Nigeria is about 12%. That 12% means maybe a huge population of organizations will be giving 12% as a salary increase to employees. That's market movement. So when you design your budgets, we usually rely on that market movement data, right? So for example, maybe market movement was 12% in January. Trust me now, market movement would have gone up, right? Because of what is going on, right? So we can no longer afford to just review our ranges. Our ranges have to be agile. They have to move the way organizations are rethinking their business models quickly and fast. We also have to be able to do that, right? To ensure that we have the right talent, we're able to retain the talents that we need, right? And then you have to focus on being able to adapt to market trends. And that's what I've just explained. This is what the market is saying. I'm not going to be stuck in my ways and say, because if you do that, you have, employees essentially that will move to other organizations, when they realize that their pay is not competitive, right? I'm not saying you be the best in the market. We have different, market percentiles that we as organizations structure our salaries to. Some organizations would, structure their pay structure to be at the median, which is usually 50%. Some would have it at 75%. Those are the ones that want to pay very well. And then you have some that would be paying at 100%, of the market in terms of, percentile. So what I think we should be doing as reward professionals is that we need to be able to have a mix, right? Don't just say that, oh, in this company, in company A, we peg our salary benchmarking, our median at the 50th percentile, our mid pay. So maybe when you have a broad salary range, you usually would have your minimum, you have your mid, and you have your maximum. Our mid is positioned to pay at the 50th percentile of the market. You might want to consider changing that for specific roles that are very critical. For example, I take maybe a data scientist. It's a very critical role. I might want to peg or position that role to be paid at the 75th percentile of the market, right? Which is slightly higher. So you have to be able to, consider a mix of, market reference points, percentile, when you're, talking about market pricing and, your salary benchmarking and all that. Moving on to non-financial rewards, which I believe is going to be very, very relevant. The top 5 reasons that employees leave organizations more than ever are not usually just around salary. No, I know salary is important, but you would have some. I've looked at data over time that shows that a lot of employees will probably leave the organization because of, lack of career progression. Career progression is a non-financial reward. So when we look at the total reward picture, you have learning and development, you have career progression, you have all that, career development and all that. So it's a non-financial reward. So we have to focus on these non-financial rewards now more than ever, right? You need to be able to identify what appeals to a specific employee group. So also ensuring that there's some level of personalization. Like I mentioned, I gave an example of someone that has just joined. For me, if I've just been in the company for 6 months, I want to be able to upskill. I want to learn. So my focus will be on a lot of learning and development for myself. Whereas like for somebody else that has been in the company for some time, now they're looking for how to move their career to the next level. So it would be career development that will be key for them. So you being able to understand what appeals to different employee groups is going to be very crucial. You can also co-create, and implement here. When I say co-create, work with your employees, work with anyone that you think, can, help you with this and say, look, guys, in this climate and going forward, what would be key, what would be important, can we redesign our career framework and all that. So co-creation is very key. And then you have to communicate. So what I've realized that a lot of organizations, they don't spend time on creating awareness around non-financial rewards because they believe this is what employees just want to see. So for example, a non-financial reward could be your flexible benefits. So I'll speak for myself. One of the reasons that I stayed so long in, my previous organization, IBM, was the flexible benefits. It was never for me about money. Money is good, but it was more about the flexible benefits, right? I have 2 young children. I wanted to be able to have time to drop them off at school and pick them up from school, not at odd hours. I remember that I would drop them off as early as 7. I would close from the office at 2 o'clock, 2:30. Pick up my kids. When I get home, I continue working. That level of flexibility, which is a non-financial reward, flexible, working hours, it's a kind of benefit. It's a reward. It's just that it's non-financial. That for me was top on my list why I continue to stay in the organization, right? So like I said, understand your employee groups. If you know you have more women that have younger children, oh, can we look at introducing flexible hours for them? So like I said, understand what appeals to different employee groups in your organization. Co-create with them. What can we present to the table, or can we just say you guys can do a compressed working week, or you can do one day from the home and 4 days. So you need to understand that, and then go back and be able to co-create and then communicate all those types of non-financial rewards to your employees, right? And then learning and development is going to be very key now, because organizations, trust me, they are not looking to spend money on training anybody right now. Everybody is trying to let's pad our cost. I don't want additional cost at this moment, right? So if you're a reward professional, what I think you should be doing now as a good strategy is for you to build subject matter experts in the organizations that can train the rest of the organization. So for example, if you have people that are subject matter experts, maybe you have maybe in a specific role, maybe you have someone that is a technical person, right? You can have them go through a train the trainer course and then have them train the rest of the organization, right? Because see, like I said, nobody wants to spend money on anything that is learning and development at the moment. So why don't you build your own knowledge, like a knowledge sharing kind of program in the organization, right? We can learn off each other, but in a more structured manner, right? For example, mentoring at this point, coaching at this point now is also a non-financial reward. When you mentor, when you coach, when you provide opportunities for that, it's a non-financial reward. So for example, I'm an employee, I've been struggling with a certain area, and then I have somebody that has 10 years experience who is a solid person. HR, you can take that SME, the solid person, through the principles of coaching. That information is all over the internet for free. How do I become a good coach? You can create curriculum to do that and then train these people so that they can train the people that are in need of this upskilling, right? You can do that, right? Just so that, it's something that, that is available. So when something like a COVID happens, or it's something worse than a COVID in the next 2 years, we have all this implemented already. We're not going to be struggling from a learning perspective, right? And then moving to the last, and for me it's so important, and it's in if you go back to what Babajide had read about my introduction, what I have done is pay transparency, right? Pay transparency is revealing to your employees how much they can earn. That's a summary of it. So if you are familiar with reward, when we look at our salary bands, we have different salary bands for different job levels. So maybe, for example, you are a HR professional, you are maybe a manager, you are the manager, job band, and you can earn between, it's usually a broad range. Maybe let's say you can earn between 2 million and 5 million, or 2 million and 7 million. I will actually reveal that to you as an employee. It sounds very odd, but trust me, we've seen the impact that has had, because what then happens is employees start to ask us questions. Okay, so if you're telling me now that the range for a HR manager is 2 million and 7 million, and I'm on 2.5 million, what do I need to earn 3 million? What do I need to earn 4 million? And then we start to tell you, at least the manager, because the manager owns anything that is pay conversation related. It's not me, right? Your manager decides, well, in some organizations, managers decide on what percentage to give their employees, a salary increase, right? So that conversation should be between you and your manager, right? So, but you will find it interesting, and then employees want to do more. They want you to put them in this um, in this career program. They're nominating themselves to do certain things, or I want to work on different projects, just because they realize that, this is how our pay philosophy is structured, right? Because our pay philosophy focuses a lot on skills. I need to upskill myself. If I want to earn more money, I need to have certain skills, right? And so that also boils down to an organization that allows for cross-learning, right? You can't tell me that I'm in HR, I can't learn about finance, or I'm in finance, I can't learn about IT. If I want to, I should be made, I should be given that opportunity, right? So employees need to understand how they're being paid. Even if you're not revealing to them, this is how our pay structure looks like, they need to understand what your reward philosophy is. If you're in a HR professional or a reward professional and your organization does not have a reward philosophy, then you guys are just playing. You're just playing around. You're not being serious, right? You need to have a reward philosophy. A reward philosophy explains the thinking, the methodology behind how you reward in the organization. So I give an example. In my previous place of work, our reward philosophy was we pay for skills, right? We differentiate, and we remain competitive. So those are three things. We are competitive, we pay for skills. So the skills was very important. If you didn't have certain skills, you were not getting salary increase, for example. You were not getting certain types of reward, because it's the skills that we need as a tech company. There's a lot of emphasis on skills, because innovation, for example, that was considered an innovation 6 months ago is no longer an innovation now. They've somebody else somewhere has innovated something else. So essentially for us, skills becomes very important. And so, like I said, it would depend on what is important in your organization, right? So employees, to a certain extent, they need to be able to know what the organization's reward philosophy is about, right? And you have to be able to get managers to have these conversations with the employees. Managers can, in the one-to-one sessions they have, in their monthly or quarterly performance review, or goal setting, goal changing, coaching, whatever it is they're doing, they can have these conversations. Because trust me, managers shy away from having this kind of conversations. They don't want to have it, right? But it's also because they don't understand the thinking and rationale behind why this organization has, pays like this or rewards like this, right? And there's nowadays there's Glassdoor, there's a website called Glassdoor, there's salary.com. You can go there and put in HR Nigeria, and you will see some amount of money coming up. And so employees go there and they make wrong assumptions. They think, oh, because Glassdoor has said my salary should be 5 million, this is what I should be earning, right? But it's very faulty assumptions. Glassdoor does not have all the facts, because when an employee is, when an employer is structuring their pay, there's so many things to consider. You're considering the size of the company, how long the company has been in existence, the revenue of the company, the market, so many things. So Glassdoor doesn't have that inside information. So when you go to Glassdoor or salary.com, all those things you see are not accurate, which is why it's very important that you have some level of transparency around, this is how we pay in this organization, and this is why we pay that. It's also important that, digital HR communications, another topic on its own that I'm very passionate about. But when it comes to things like pay, I feel that it should be done in a very nice, fancy, contemporary way, right? Using digital comms to do that, right? Not just in this boring manner, and then you just write a couple of bullet points, but look for ways. If it's a GIF, a GIF, it's a JPEG, or it's an animation, whatever, something top of the shelf in communicating what your pay philosophy is in the organization. Now I know there's a Q&A. Yeah, so kindly send in your questions. I know that Babajide had mentioned that we would have 30 minutes for question, but it looks like I'm short of, 10:40. I've done about 8 minutes. I've taken 8 to 10 minutes from that Q&A, right? So if you have any questions, let me
That's fine.
know. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, there's a question from Emmanuel.
Okay.
He says, can we really say that career progression is a non-financial reward, given
Yeah.
the fact that it indirectly comes with pay increments?
Yeah. So really, it's still part of the total reward framework, right? But sometimes career progression, career development doesn't always come with a financial reward, right? Your career progression could be in form of coaching. It could be in form of mentoring. It could be in form of a job shadowing. It could be in form of a job rotation, right? It doesn't always have to be promotion. So more than ever, we try to make it, I mean, we put it in the angle of it's not so much of a financial reward per se. Because, you know, fine, in this, maybe in this part of the world, you would say, oh, because I'm getting promoted to a director, I'm going to get a new car, I'm going to get a more salary, but there are other means of progressing your career. And that is the one that I think we should focus on, right? Not just from a promotion angle, but, you know, all those things I mentioned, mentoring, coaching, job shadowing, job rotation, you know, yeah, on the job training, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, are you, I think that's all the questions we have so far.
Okay, all right. Let me stop sharing my screen quickly and let me open up Mural and see how, just to show you how Mural looks like. And like I said, you can actually get onto Mural for free. See if I can log into my Mural. Okay. So Mural is, you know, like I said, it's a digital workspace. It's for team collaboration, visual collaboration, right? Not just, we're not writing. It's not about writing now. So let me see. I remember I had it open, sign in. 1 second. So I'm trying to open it because it's quite heavy, and so it takes a bit of time, but just, you know, we still have time, and I'll show it to you guys. So Mural has a 30-day free trial that you can, you know, get access to, and then you can, you know, still work with it within that 30 days. So just 1 second. It's just uploading. Okay. Okay, I have it open now. Let me share my screen. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Can everyone see my screen? Okay, you can. Fantastic. All right, so this is how Mural looks like. So for example, you can do anything with Mural. You can do feedback. So it's just visual collaboration. You being able to visualize what you guys are talking about, what you're collaborating on. So let me show you the one that is for, there's one for feedback. I remember I'd used Mural for feedback. And then I'm going to show you the one that is for, okay, this was the personal grid I showed you guys. These are all design thinking principle. The personal, let me open it. The personal grid, empathy map, idea prioritization. Hold on 1 second. Let me look for really big ideas. Empathy map. 1 second. Workshop planning. Wait, I want to look for the design thinking one. There's a design thinking template here. Assumption grid. Okay, yeah, there's a design thinking one here. Why is this not opening? Okay, it's opening now. Okay, so this is how Mural looks like. So Mural just helps you. It helps you with projects from start to finish, right? So it tells you start here. Let me reduce this. And then, you can see what it has there. So this helps you with the people. For example, who are your stakeholders? You take your sticky note. So this mural, it allows you to collaborate. So you can have 4 or 5 people logged on into the same mural, right? And so maybe we're talking about a new HR project now, and we're saying, okay, who are the stakeholders that we need to reach out to in order for this, for us to be able to deploy this project. So for example, like I can put CFO, this is my comment, I move it to where you have people, and then maybe somebody else could have a purple sticky notes, and then the person maybe writes the CGM, the country general manager, So I'm just giving examples what Mural does. This is everybody collaborating on one space, right? Visual collaboration, because sometimes, there's this thing that, people are generally very visual, right? And so you're doing that, you're talking about what the problems are, what the solutions might be, what the challenges are. So there are different templates. You can use Mural for a host of different things, right? So this is how it looks like. You have a 30-day free that you can use, on Mural and all that. So you have templates here, and it's easy to learn. And there's so many of them. It's not just Mural. You have Slack. Slack is also quite popular. You can actually even make calls with Slack now, right? Let's see. You can do a storyboard here. You can create a roadmap on Mural. We're not together physically, but we're doing this virtually. And then, so that's just to show you guys how Mural looks like, So this is an example of I'm trying to create something. Stage 1, this is what we need to do. This is ABC. So, yeah. Okay. So I think there's a question.
Thank you very much for that insightful session. Thank you for the strategies that you shared.
There's a question.
Yeah.
Babajide, sorry. Okay. There's a question from
Could you throw more light on reward philosophy?
So reward philosophy is, you as an organization coming together, understanding, this is where, for example, this is our goal. It starts from the business strategy itself. This is our goal. This is our vision. This is our mission. This is what we want to achieve from a short-term perspective. This is what we want to achieve from a long-term perspective. This is our overall goal. So for example, let me give an example of maybe a company's vision. A company's vision could be, we want to be the leading exporter or something in Africa. We want to be able to attract, critical talents, from a people perspective. Now that's their vision and all that. So how do I go back and come up with a reward philosophy, right? It's a conversation between HR professionals, a conversation between financial professionals, your CFOs, your CEOs. It's a total business conversation, right? Because the thing with reward is, most times, a lot of organizations, they get it wrong. I can give you organizations that have gotten it wrong, right? Where they just felt that, we need to be the best paying in the market, right? That's our philosophy, right? We want to be the best paying. That is an actual philosophy, right? An actual philosophy might be to pay for long service. We want to pay for long service. It doesn't make sense. A philosophy would not just be one statement. You could have 2 or 3 reward philosophies. Your philosophy, for example, could be to pay for performance. So if we are going to reward you, it's driven by performance. If you perform, we reward you. Another philosophy could be, we are going to be paying for skills. If you have certain skills that is going to move us to the next line of our business, we're going to reward you for that. I know that some organizations, they reward based on length of service. I think they do that in civil service. I don't know. And it's not practical. It doesn't make any sense, right? Because, every organization focuses on value. right? And organizations, for your organizations to last, to stand, it's driven by revenue, right? So why am I rewarding you for long service? When I say rewarding for long service, I don't mean all this, your long service awards, you get a plaque. That's not what I mean. That one is a benefit. I'm talking about, this is our way of thinking, right? So let me give an example of an organization who did not think of their reward philosophy very well, right? One organization that had issues was Etisalat. When Etisalat came into the country, their main goal was, because, okay, they wanted to compete. So maybe their vision at that point was, we want to compete with the likes of Globacom, Airtel, MTN. And for us to do that from a reward perspective, this is our reward philosophy, is to be the highest paying in the market. That is an example of a reward philosophy. What they did wrong was that they started hiring people and just paying them enormously. Maybe you were coming from Glow, you were earning 500,000, Etisalat to give you 3 million naira. They were doing all that, right? But what happened 2-3 years down the line? In fact, I think 5 years down the line, it was not sustainable. They couldn't sustain it. They had to fire people. They reviewed their pay structures. So those are things that you have to think of very well when you're coming up with your philosophy. Do we want to be the best paid? Yeah, you can be the best paid, but you have to have financial business projections to think like that, right? And most times your financial business projections can also change. They're variable. You might have a projection that in 10 years, maybe now we're a 1 billion naira company. In 10 years, we want to be a 20 billion naira company. As a result of that, I want to be paying at the 75th percentile. That's my reward philosophy. I want to be the highest paying in the market, right? So I mean, there are lots of things that will come into play when you're designing a reward philosophy. The first thing for me, it has to be sustainable, right? I give an example of a benefit. I remember there was a specific company, was Ericsson. Ericsson used to, one of their benefits then was that if you were traveling internationally, right, they would pick you up with the pilot, with an helicopter. There's this helicopter place in VI, I think it's called Caverton or something. So you as an employee, you will go to Caverton, they would take you with an helicopter from Caverton in VI to the international airport, Muritala Airport, right? Within 2-3 years, they stopped it. It wasn't sustainable, right? So your philosophy has to be, I mean, it's a how to design and come up with a philosophy. It's another lesson on its own, right? It's like a strategy session, it's something that I need to sit down with the business. I need to understand the business itself before I, as a HR professional, reward professional, will say, this is what I think we need to be doing, right? If you're a company that is a startup, you do not want, your philosophy is not to be the highest paying, right? Your philosophy could be, look, we're a company that is starting up. We want to drive sales. And like I said, you have to be agile. Philosophies can change. And that's what we're doing now. It can change. Maybe 5 years ago, our philosophy, we've changed our philosophies before. 5 years ago, our philosophy is to pay for performance. We're only looking at performance. That's how we want to reward. We want to reward for performance. And because you want to reward for performance, you then go back and ensure that the programs that you come up with are performance driven. For example, you're very heavy on short-term and long-term incentives because it's a company that wants to pay for performance. So you ensure that pretty much the whole organization has a performance, a business revenue target. And then how you reward them is driven on how they can meet that target. There's a lot of focus on short-term and long-term incentives. You're not a company that is giving car allowance, gym allowance, and all those things. Because right now, at this stage in this organization, the focus is how to build our revenue, how to maintain, or how to, not even maintain, you've just started, how to grab market share. And for you to do that, there has to be a lot of focus on selling, right? So like I said, it's very relative. You can't just say, this philosophy is going to be applicable in this organization. You have to sit down and say, okay, this is what I think we need to be doing. Right? So for example, if you're looking at yeah. So Samuel, what I want to do is, there's a design thinking, enterprise design thinking training that is actually free from IBM. I am going to send the link to you. You can register. It has a lot of free okay. Okay, I'm still here. Okay, let me just post it in the chat for everybody to see. Can you guys still hear me? So it's here. Yeah, that's it. So design thinking, you need to, okay, Owaido, you mentioned that I can't see the question though. Could you throw more light on reward philosophy? I've answered that. Career progression, I've answered that. Yeah, so I can't see your question. Can you guys hear me? I've just posted the link here. All right, somebody mentioned that she asked a question that it's not been answered. I don't know, Babajide, if you could scroll through the chats and confirm what the question is. This is the link. Can you see the link here? Oh, it's like, oh, to all panelists. I'm sorry. So all attendees and panelists. Yeah, this is it. Everybody should see it now. Okay, sorry. Owaido, you mentioned that there's a question you had. Yeah.
Okay,
Go
but
on,
next
please.
time, please use the Q&A feature so we can easily track it. So the question is, what about a situation where the owner of the organization takes all the decisions without your input?
Yeah. So the thing is, I understand that there's, people work in smaller organizations, right? But it doesn't stop you from owning the seat. Now, you're a HR professional, you need to own a seat at the table. You have to have shown certain certain competencies that the owner would feel that, look, I need to have this lady in this meeting because of certain conversations that we've had in the past. You have to be very assertive, right? I know that a lot of one-man businesses, they struggle with understanding what the impact of HR is, right? But it is for you to figure out how to get them to listen to you, right? How to get them to listen. I think the first thing I would say you should do right now is for you to now flip the coin. You should be doing more of listening to them. If they're in their meetings, if you're not able to sit with the owner, the other people that work in the organization understand what they do, right? Because I expect that every organization, they would have some sort of business meeting every week or every other week, right? Sit with people, build relationships outside of the owner, build relationships with other people in the organization, have conversations with them. You can even search online, how do I ensure HR has a seat at the table? What sort of techniques can I use? Because the thing is, a business owner wants to speak to someone who understands the business, and can come up with people people insights from just understanding the business, right? So for you, there's a lot of work for you to do. First thing, like I said, if the owner is not somebody that is approachable, that you can just say, oh, I want to have a meeting with you, then try and get the information you need from other people in the organization. Look at the structures you guys have now. Build a business justification why I feel we should do A, B, C, D. And that is why if you're a HR professional now, you need to know how to interpret data. No matter how small, Excel is there. You don't need to have fancy tools and technology and analytics to do that. Excel, you can learn Excel on YouTube, trust me. If you are able to understand how to tell a story with data, which is why you're a HR professional, you need to be maintaining some level of data for all your employees that have left, what their performance was, what their salaries were, what the skills they have. Imagine if you went to this business owner and said, look, Oga, as an example, based on all the analysis I have done and the projections that the company has, I feel that in the next couple of years or in the next couple of months, we might need to hire ABC because I understand that we're trying to open a plant here, or we might need to leverage on certain skills, and this is how I feel we can solve it. Be a problem solver. You are a HR professional. You have to solve a problem. And the problem is not just people. See, you can't have business and HR is one. Within business, there's people, there's structure, there's processes. It is one. You need to understand the business. If you don't understand the business, you are going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult for you to be seen as credible, right? I know that there are some owners that are very set in their ways. I've worked in that kind of environment before where the owner hasn't seen the impact. So you go and show him what the impact of HR could be on his organization. Do all your fact finding, speak to people you need to speak to, look for ways that you can actually solve a problem, a people problem, or even a business problem. And then once you've done that and you are sure that, oh, this looks very tangible, this is achievable, call a meeting with him. He's going to be very shocked that, oh, so you were able to read between the lines. You were able to see this. You were able to see that. Oh, wow, fantastic. What do we need to do? You need to prove yourself. You need to prove that you're credible, right? Yeah, go on.
Thank you very much for the answer. There's a question here from Obaseki. He said, I recall you mentioned restless reinvention, diverse empowered team, and the third point is what again?
The first one is, in fact, which is the most important, is focusing on your user. Focus on your user. That's the first one. So I've sent that link for that design thinking. You can actually, gain a badge. You can gain a badge. So if you complete that session, you can have a badge. So yeah, an IBM ID, you need to register with your own email address, right? It doesn't, you forget that IBM ID. So any email address you have, just register with it, put your password, and then it will tell you. And there's so many courses. It's not just design thinking, but design thinking is good. Trust me, it's going to set you apart from, different, HR professionals. Design thinking is having a knowledge of it is an edge for you. Trust me. There's so many things you can do with it. I have done so many things with it, right? And then you can add me on LinkedIn as well if you want to. I'm a LinkedIn junkie. I'm on LinkedIn, half of the day, reading stuff, connecting with people. I barely post. I think the only thing that I post now is jobs, and that's because we've had a lot of people lose their jobs. So once I see a job, I share. That's the only activity you would see on my LinkedIn profile, or I share articles and stuff like that. But you can connect with me, please, on LinkedIn. Here we go. Yeah, fantastic.
Okay, quick one, another question from Juliet. How can we effectively tie the performance of staff to the organization's revenue or profitability when their services are not the physical revenue yielding to the organization?
When you say physical revenue, what do you mean by physical revenue? What do you mean by that? That's what I need to understand. So what you're saying is, how do you tie the performance of staff to the organization's revenue or profitability when they're okay? I think I understand what you're saying. So let me give an example. You tell me if this is what you're saying. For example, HR is not, yeah, absolutely. I understand what you're saying. People traditionally would say HR is not a revenue generating organization, but I beg to differ, right? And we've been able to show that HR is actually a revenue generating organization. So how is HR a revenue generating organization? It's, for example, when I hire the right talent. If I hire the right talent and I'm able to measure return on investment on that talent, I'm helping you generate revenue. So essentially, I am a third party, right? So you can tie performance from like a competency perspective, from a program perspective. So it depends on what the function is. Performance will be relative depending on what the function is. Performance for somebody in finance, for example, is how do we keep our costs? Finance is revenue generating to a certain extent because they manage costs, they optimize costs. So that performance metrics or goals will be different for finance. Performance metrics will be different for your HR professionals, for your marketing professionals. It will be very relative. Tying it to organizational revenue is usually around the sellers. But like I said, it's something that you can actually do, but it's a bit complex. And if you want, we can connect. I can have that conversation with you, right? How do you, because the thing is, see, at the end of the day, they are not generating any revenue per se. I understand what you're saying, but they are helping the team that generates revenue. So that is how you would then come up with, this is what you need to be doing in this unit, because you are support. And that's why they call this unit support functions. They call, I mean, it's general. They call HR a support function. They call finance support. They call facilities supply support, right? And it's fine. But from a support perspective, what do I need to be doing? What support do I need to be providing to get the next business unit that provides revenue to attain revenue, right? That's how you think about what goals to set for them, and then what sort of behaviors do they display when they are meeting those goals. Well, we can connect, and I'd like to have a good conversation around that with you.
Thank you so much, Bumi. It's been a very fantastic session. Thank you for the strategies that you shared here for free. You should be paying consultation fee for this. Thank you for your time and sharing from your wealth of experience. Thank you everyone that joined. This is a good start to the weekend. Trust you got value from this session. The next session will be starting in less than an hour. By 12 noon, we'll be looking at maintaining a strong culture during a crisis. Be taken by the speaker is Kende Akongbe. That session is also pre-approved for 3 business credits. So be sure to join in about an hour from now. So thank you once again. Thank you, Bumi. It's really nice having you on this platform. Thank you for sharing your time and your experience with us.
Thank you. All right. Take care, everyone.
All right. Bye, everyone. See you at 12.